Bristol paper and a little piece of computer paper. All you have to do at this point is just draw some form of shape on the Bristol paper. So I have a shape drawn here. I don't really know what it is. You can see that it's not really too perfect, but it does generally take up most of the space on my 4 by 5 inch rectangular piece of Bristol paper. So just make sure that it is taking up a good portion of that small piece of Bristol, just so that way it's a lot easier to work with. What we want to do next is go ahead and cut out our shape using your X-Acto knife that comes in your kit. The X-Acto knife kind of comes apart like this. This is so that way you can see this little slit here. You can just place the tip of your X-Acto blade in that little slit, and it should be able to break off fairly easily, like so. You can just safely discard this. I like to wrap it up in tape so that way it doesn't tear my garbage bag later on when I'm throwing out the trash. But yeah, see? So now you'll have a fresh tip, which you probably don't need to do that right away, but just wanted to show you guys how you get a fresh blade from your X-Acto knife real quick. So next, all I'm going to do here is just cut out this shape. I'm going to be cutting towards myself. This allows me to have more control over the X-Acto blade as I'm working. If I end up cutting away from myself, you're more likely to lose control over the blade and you'll end up cutting into your shape or cutting off of the table, which you don't want to do. Another quick tip here is I'm using the back of a little piece of it's just like some palette paper back that I'm using. You can use the back of your Bristol board pad. I think that just cutting on the back of those seems to work out fairly well. If not, then you can always just try to cut on something that you don't really care about. I don't want to cut up my desk, so that's why I'm using something else to cut on. It's just one of those little things you always kind of forget about. If you have curvy kind of edges, you can see here, I'm just gradually, carefully, slowly kind of moving around the piece itself as I'm kind of cutting towards me still. This ensures that you'll have a much more smoother cut as opposed to like a jagged edge. Or you can just kind of move your X-Acto blade around. Really just try to find what's going to work best for you. Okay, so now I have my odd little shape all cut out. You can go ahead and start to clean up a few of those edges if you feel that the knife kind of got away from you at some point. Your shapes may be a little bit less complex, which is fine. You can really do whatever you want to for your shape. Try to make sure that there aren't any holes in it or anything like that. Like if you're drawing a cat head, try not to give it eyes. That might just complicate things a little bit more. Okay, so this is the one that's already gridded out at the top. We can go ahead and put this to the side for now. We are going to work on this guy here. So by now I will have given you a little piece of computer paper to work with. That is the same size as that little piece of Bristol board that I cut out my shape from. If you have tape, that's great. Go ahead and use it now. You're going to see that we're going to be working with this little piece of computer paper. I want you to just lightly tape this down in the center of this gridded page here. Okay? And now next you're just going to take your shape. I like to kind of just roll up a little piece of tape and have it on the back so that way it doesn't move around while I'm trying to trace it. But what you're going to do here is try to kind of just maneuver your shape like halfway on your piece of computer paper and then halfway on the large piece of Bristol paper. So I'm just gonna do it like this. All you're going to do now is just trace it. Okay, so once you traced your shape, I'm going to go ahead and take it off here. And you can see that half of it is traced on the piece of computer paper and the other half is on the large piece of Bristol paper. So go ahead and just take this piece of computer paper and just slide it up to that little box that has the other half of our tracing on it. Sliding it directly up, and we're just going to trace our pencil marks that are on the larger piece of Bristol paper. I'm going to go ahead and tape down my little computer paper here again, so that way it doesn't move around too much. And just trace those little faint pencil marks that you can see. Okay, so now, oh, that little corner didn't even trace. That's why I couldn't see that. Make sure your shape is fully traced. Okay, so your computer paper will look like this. You're going to have the bottom half of your shape down here, and then the top part on the bottom. So, next, you're going to do the same thing. So again, taking it down here to the center, tape, try to keep it straight. Try to just line it up and keep it as straight as possible. But now I think I'm going to go ahead and work with this other side. I'll just kind of do something maybe like this. I'm going to go ahead and overlap that area here. You can choose to do that or not. It depends on your shape and the size of your shape. So let's just go ahead and do this and trace your shape again. Remember, half on the large piece of gridded Bristol paper and halfway on that computer paper. All right. And if you have pointy edges like I had on mine, you can go ahead and just kind of hold those corners down or points down as you're tracing them. Again, I'm going to lift up my tape here and I'm just going to slide my computer paper directly over. And I am just going to trace those pencil marks, which they're a little bit easier to see now that I was applying more pressure with my pencil. Okay, so I made a slight change to my shape here. If you can see, this little area right here was going to go a lot further down, and I chose to just stop it at some point. That's because this is such a small area. It's going to be difficult to work with. It's going to be so hard to see that little area right there as I'm working later on. But you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and do that just for you guys. Just for those of you who want to see what's going to happen, who want to see this train wreck. And then I believe that there's this little area here that kind of wants to go into, yeah, just this little point here. Your little piece of computer paper should look something like this. Just try to make sure that the little surface area of it all is kind of incorporated. My shape is a little bit difficult to work with. Yours may be easier, so you can feel free to go ahead and go diagonally if you choose to do that. So you could tape down your shape kind of going off to the corner here. Again, you could just trace it, and then because you'll have half over here on this corner, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to slide it up and then you'll trace again. But then there'll also be some of your shape on this area and on this area too. So you're just going to have to trace all of that. But I think that for now, my shape's going to be good. Yeah, we'll see what happens here. So to trace this, all I did was tape my piece of computer paper to the window, and I also went over it with some Sharpies so that way it's going to be a little easier for me to see while I'm tracing it. And then I just taped one of my 5x4 pieces of Bristol, the thicker piece of paper, on top of it. So all I'm going to do now is trace this and it'll be ready to work with. Okay, so I'm all done there. What I went ahead and did was go ahead and on the back mark what side is the top, and I just started to double check to make sure that the pattern's going to wrap correctly. So I just checked each side here to make sure that once I scan this and print it out later, that all of my little lines are going to meet up correctly. This is, I'd have to double check that one again. This is so that way later on the pattern's gonna wrap correctly, and you know, it's just better to catch it early as opposed to having a lot of printed out pieces of paper that aren't going to work out. All right, and since I'm working at the window here, I'm just taping my value page up over my little card here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and trace it now. So we're tracing it just across these 3 panels in the center, nowhere else, just those 3 panels. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now since it's early in the morning and the neighbors aren't awake yet. All right, and just a heads up, as you're working on this, make sure that your lines are matching up on the sides as you go around, so that way it'll wrap correctly. Okay, so now we are going to work with just the little piece of computer paper, so that way it'll be easier to plan on in case we mess up. So go ahead and just put the piece of Bristol aside for right now. We're going to be doing this in black and white, alternating the black and white areas so that way the shape fully shows up and is clear and we're able to see. So all I mean by that is we do not want 2 black areas touching or 2 white areas touching, because it'll look awkward and our shapes won't come out correctly. So just go ahead and use your pencil, try to plan out what you want to be black and what you want to be white. This doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just using my pencil here to kind of quickly shade in that plan. So we're gonna want this little area here to be white, color this in black, and so on and so forth. So this little area right here, it's so tiny and hard to see, but it is going to be white, and I'll just try to take like a little mental note of that for later on whenever we're inking in the other card. Actually, what I'm going to go ahead and do real quick is just kind of extend that same little area on my inked card just a little bit more, so that way it won't get lost. Okay, so I just wanted to plan that real quick for later on. Right now we're just going to go ahead and finish mapping out our value page completely before we start inking anything. Okay, so we have our lovely value page here again. Everything should be wrapping correctly, all of the little pencil marks should be meeting each other, and it should flow seamlessly. For this bottom area here, you'll remember we're going to be working with the kind of foreground background reversal idea. And we're just going to be using our original little cutout shape to do that. So we want to get it in the center somehow in each little area. So how do we do that? Well, go ahead and tape this down somewhere that is generally in the center. What we're mainly looking for is it to be generally in the same place as we're moving forward. Okay. So now go ahead and measure in 2 inches. Make your little mark. You can go ahead and do that for all of these little panels here. So tick mark at the 2, tick mark at the 6, same thing here at the 10, just to mark the center. And if you guys will remember, up here it's already measured in 2 inches, so we can just go ahead and real quick line that up in order to have a straight line. And what I'm doing here is I am just going directly over our shape. So did you guys see how I did that? It went just right over the shape in order for me to find the center. Let's go ahead and match up the lines again. Just going vertically. And remember that we don't want the lines in the center boxes, only in the bottom ones. Alright, now find the center of this side here. So 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. 2.5 there, and we'll go ahead and do 2.5 over here. Alright, so now we can just go ahead and bring that line all the way across. Again, be sure that you are just going directly over your shape, so that line will be right across your shape. Okay. Now we're going to trace the shape real quick. If you have pointy edges like mine does, go ahead and just either tape it down as you're working, or you can also just hold it down like I'm doing here. Okay, so now we have our shape traced down like that. Now we can go ahead and trace it on the other ones. All we're going to do is make sure that our lines on our shape are lined up with the lines on our value page, and just trace it. Alright, and there you have it. Your value page is all mapped out and ready for inking later. Alright, so next I'm just going to ink up my main little Bristol card here. I have my computer paper with my little design all planned out on how I'm going to ink it off here to the side, just to use as reference, so that way I don't mess up again. And I also have my ink here, some palette paper, a little a cup of water, a brush, and a paper towel. I actually already lost the brushes that came with the kit, so I'm just using this Walmart brush. You can really use any brushes you'd like if you have them. The ones that came in the kit are great. I just lost them. So go ahead and just lay out some ink here off to the side. I like to go ahead and just put a quick drop of water in my ink. Whenever you're just using black and just trying to paint with black ink, you really don't need a whole lot of water, and you can go ahead and start inking up your card. I like to just kind of outline it a little bit as I'm working. I'm frequently moving my card around, and I'm just trying my absolute best to stay in the lines. Maneuvering the card around as opposed to maneuvering your hand around is a little bit easier to do, since that way it requires a little less movement on your hand's part if you're not fully equipped and coordinated in using a brush. Okay, and there you have it. Should be inked up pretty well. If you feel that you messed up in a few areas, you can just kind of maybe take your Sharpie to get really little pointy or difficult corners. However though, if you are experienced in using Photoshop, you can also just fix little details in Photoshop. And if you are not tech savvy and you are afraid to get in there with Sharpie, or you messed up in little areas like I did here and maybe a little bit up here, I can assist you guys in fixing that in Photoshop, no problem. We really aren't going to use Photoshop too much in this class, really just to print out this image and resize it. Other than that, your little inked card is good to go.